Hello, test one, two. Hello, test one, two. There's something wrong in this on the screen. I think we need to fix this. Give us a moment. There's something wrong in this on the screen. I think we need to fix this. Give us a moment. There's something wrong in this on the screen. I think we need to fix this. Give us a moment. I guess I'm audible at this time. So hello, welcome to the Lungleng show. Tonight, the point of discussion that we need to delve into is the inner line permit. Inner line permit is a very contentious issue in the state of Nagaland and has been a very contentious issue. And thanks to the Naga Students Federation, and later on picked up by the Dimapur Naga Students Union, these two organizations have been along with lots and lots of volunteers and some civil society organizations. They have been fervently fighting for the implementation of the ILP inner line permit in all over Nagaland, in the whole state of Nagaland. Because earlier ILP used to be implemented everywhere in the state of Nagaland except for Dimapur district, erstwhile the former Dimapur district. Now it has become Jumukidima, Newland. Another two districts were added. So, ILP was given to the state of Nagaland somewhere around 1970, in the 1970s, early 1970s, if I'm not mistaken. So ILP was given by the President of India to the state of Nagaland as a gift because the state of Nagaland needed to be protected from the outsiders because it was considered a tribal region, indigenous community that needed a protection. So that's how ILP came into being for the state of Nagaland. So as we all know, the state of Nagaland got its statehood in the year 1963, 1st of December. So since Nagaland got its statehood, the President of India freely offered this ILP, Inner Line Permit implementation, the policy to the state of Nagaland. So since then, the ILP has been implemented all over Nagaland except for the Dimapur district, which is now the Newland and Jammu Kadima. So these three regions, the valley part of Nagaland, I would say. So this ILP has been implemented all over Nagaland except for this valley area. The reason the ILP was not implemented in this area was because there were lots and lots of non-indigenous settlers in this valley part of the state. And that's why ILP, to implement ILP in a region like this, was always risky and was always contentious in the sense that they were the non-indigenous settlers who have been settled in Nagaland state before even the Nagaland state got its statehood in 1916. They have been settling here. So immediately and instantly implementing ILP was considered very, very problematic. So this has been going on for quite a long time. And now what actually happened in the process was the students' union body, like the Naga Students Federation and the Dimapur Naga Students Union, they have been, like I said, fervently fighting for the implementation of ILP in the valley part of Nagaland, which is Dimapur region. But the state government has been reluctant. Now, let's take a look into what the latest status of the inner line permit in the state of Nagaland. As we all know that the government of Nagaland, with so much pressure from the students' union, had finally agreed to implement ILP even in the Dimapur region. Since last year, September last year, the cabinet decided that they would implement ILP fully even in Dimapur district. So when you look at it now, if ILP has been implemented even in the Dimapur district, like as like it is implemented all over Nagaland, then what would be the repercussion? What would be the consequences on those people on those non-indigenous people who have been living in the state of Nagaland since a long time ago, before Nagaland state got its statehood even. So let me just take you one by one. So accordingly, the government of Nagaland has come up with two cutoff dates, which was the December 1, 1963, when the state got its statehood in the year 1963, December 1, because Nagaland was part of Assam before that. So, and the second cutoff date was November 21, 1979. That was when Dimapur area was declared as a tribal belt. So that's how it came into being. First, let's take a look into, ILP will be exempt those people, those settlers, and who have been settling in Nagaland before 1963, before December 1, 1963, will be exempt from all these ILP requirements. But they just need to produce one card known as a smart card, and that through that smart card they can acquire and obtain the PRC, which is permanent residence certificate. And once they acquire that PRC, they will be legally permitted to become the resident of Nagaland state. So that has been given to those who have been settling in Nagaland before Nagaland state got its statehood in 1963. And they can even apply for the domicile state of Nagaland. So they will have a property rights and the property ownership, and they will have the voting rights as well. So that has been the arrangement so far. That's for those who have been settling in Nagaland before Nagaland state got its statehood in 1963. Now, this group of people, this category of people have been, let's say, passed, without much disruption, without much tension. So those who have been settling in Nagaland before this 1963, they have no problem at all. So they just need to produce a card and a certificate, and they will become a permanent resident of the Nagaland state. So they don't need ILP, Inner Line Permit. Now, the second group of people are those who came after 1963 to settle in Nagaland. So we are referring only to non-indigenous people who come mostly from the mainland India. So they will be allowed to stay in Nagaland provided they also produce permanent resident certificate. The reason they are exempt from this ILP requirement and of those who come after 1963, in in other sense, in other words, those who came after 1963 and before 1979, November 21, those who came in between these two time periods, they will also be exempt from the requirement of ILP, provided they produce a certificate like the permanent residence certificate. So if they produce that, they will become a permanent resident of Nagaland state. The reason they are exempt from the requirement of the ILP is because Dimapur was declared as a tribal belt area only in 1971, November 21, 1979. I'm sorry, November 21, 1979. So it was declared by the state government, the Nagaland state government, that this Dimapur be declared now as a tribal belt because it has been fully incorporated into the state of Nagaland. So whoever is living in Dimapur will be considered as living in the area, in the region, in the land of the tribal, mostly the Naga tribal. So since Dimapur was declared as a tribal belt in 1979, November 21, people who had come to Nagaland between this time period will be also exempt from the requirement of ILP. So this Dimapur area was declared as tribal belt during when, I'll show you the picture, when Vizol Angami was the chief minister of Nagaland, this Dimapur region was declared as tribal belt, and he was elected as a member of Legislative Assembly and became the party leader, became the chief minister of Nagaland from the party known as the United Democratic Front, the UDF, somewhere in the 1970s. So he is the guy, Vizol Angami. And then under his leadership as the chief minister of Nagaland, he implemented and he brought Dimapur into the tribal belt in 1979, November 21, once again. Now, Nagaland government has adopted a policy since last year that those who came after 1979, November 21, will not be now exempt from the requirement of ILP. So these people who came after 1979 will need to produce always or take the ILP inner line permit. So if you are a businessman who comes or who came after 1979, you will be required to produce ILP, to obtain ILP and produce whenever is needed by the authority. So this has been the policy of the state government of Nagaland. So now the ILP has brought into the state, into the Dimapur region. This has also made compulsory for people who are coming to Nagaland after 1979. If you're not able to produce, you will be fined or you can be arrested because of this ILP. So like I said, ILP was given to the state of Nagaland, and it was part, and it is still part of the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation of 1873, which was a law created by the British, the colonial India, during the British time, to protect the tribals from the northeast, to enjoy seclusion, as in to enjoy this kind of safeguard policy and protection from outside invaders or outside populations. So it's just to protect the culture and social life of the tribal. So many people are arguing the validity of ILP in the 21st century now, because it was not the 19th, or it's not a British colonial India anymore. So whether we need this ILP for very, very modern tribal nowadays is a big question to answer. It depends on a lot of factors, and we need to look into many, many factors whether we need still this ILP. So Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, and Mizoram, now all the states have ILP, inner line permit, because this is required, this is given or in other words, empowered by the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation of 1873. And now if you look at the Article 19, Part 1 and Clause D of the Indian Constitution, you will see that every citizen of India has the right to move freely throughout the country, the state of India. So there will be no restriction. Then the question arises as to then why people need to produce ILP? Why there is a concept, a policy known as ILP, if the Constitution allows anybody to freely move within to any part of the country freely? India is a very diverse country, and it is made up of different groups, different types of people, and different ethnic groups. So diverse that Indian Constitution tries to accommodate a lot of people, a lot of social groups, to protect everyone equally. So despite the fact that the Constitution gives us the guarantee to move freely in any part of the country, ILP still came as an exception for the tribal people like you and I. So the validity of tribal in the 21st century, well, that can be debated now, because it's not just to protect the social and customary life, customary practices of the tribal now. Rather, it's a protection of a minority from the majority population. Because if there's no protection, the minority tribal group, regardless of how modern the tribal group has become, the majority population can always in other words, can always be overtaken in terms of market, in terms of the monopoly in the market, in terms of labor. In many areas, the tribals can be overtaken because the tribals are very, very less when it comes to population comparison with the majority population, right? So that's why I think there's still a requirement for ILP, not because the tribal culture, customs are wearing out. Are wearing off. It's rather because of the ratio between the tribal and the non-tribal population is incomparable. It's too stark. The difference is too big, too stark that this minority population always need to be protected. So that can be one strong argument why we still need ILP. However, if you look at the Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, there is a clause 5 that will say that tribal people from the northeastern region still need this kind of protection. I think that's why ILP came into the picture, and its validity always sustains until today. Now I will show you. So anyone who has settled in Nagaland before 1963 will just need to produce the smart card and the proof of their stay since before 1963, so that they will be given the PRC, permanent residence certificate, and they can stay in Nagaland without the requirement, without a need for ILP. First and foremost thing. Secondly, anyone who came after 1963 and before 1979, November 21, they also need to just produce the permanent residence certificate. The reason is because, like, I just want to recap here again. It was not a tribal area until 1979. So this ILP would not be technically applied to them. But anyone who comes after 1979 will need ILP. We need inner line permit, and whoever cannot produce will be dealt with accordingly by the law, by the law of the land, by the existing laws. Meaning they can be legally charged, they can be arrested by the police. Now the biggest question, also the elephant in the room. All right, the implementation is now accepted by the Nagaland state government that, okay, Dimapur, New Land, Chumukidima, there will be in the implementation of ILP. Well and good. But how well and how effective it is going to be implemented, that is also another big question. And that has been the question raised by the Dimapur Naga Students Union and the Naga Students Federation. So let's see what's going to happen, because this was just implemented since last year. And with the coming of this implementation, even the Dimapur District Deputy Commissioner has just recently issued different rates for anyone who wants to enter Nagaland after 1979. So there's a fee structure. I would like to show it to all of you. There's a different fee structure, and the fee structure looks, and it goes like this. Let's just pull this out. So this is the fee structure, and now anyone who enters, anyone who is not settled in Nagaland before 1979, or anyone who came to Nagaland after 1979 will need to obtain ILP. And now the rate of ILP for anyone who enters Nagaland is, for a tourist for 30 days, it's first one. For a tourist for 30 days is 20 rupees, and that will be, a targar will be required. And for international tourists, for 30 days it'll be 300 rupees to get the ILP. And for traders, laborers, technical personnel and consultant, they will be charged like 1,500 rupees and 150 rupees for laborers and 1,500 rupees for technical consultant. And for priests, like, they will be charged 1,500 for 3 years, and for teachers who come from outside, they will be charged 1,500 for 3 years. And students, up to 5 years, they will be charged 300 rupees for ILP. And for business businessmen and partners in business, they will be charged 5,000 rupees for 3 years, and that can be renewed later on after the completion of 3 years by paying 3,000 rupees. So this has been issued by the Dimapur District Deputy Commissioner, Dimapur District Authority just yesterday. I guess it was issued yesterday or a few days ago. So this is going to be the thing now. But here is also one thing that we need to understand. How about the tribals from other state when they enter into Nagaland state? For example, the Naga tribal or Kuki tribal, for example, or let's say the tribal from Assam or the tribal from Mizoram. When they enter into Nagaland state, will they be required to produce ILP? Nagaland state ILP is very relaxed and flexible. I mean, it is very accommodating for the neighboring states. So anyone who comes from Manipur, whether it's a tribal or non-tribal, indigenous or non-indigenous, do not need to produce ILP to enter into Nagaland, because Nagaland is very accommodating. Nagaland ILP policy is very accommodating in that sense. But the contrast is that if anyone from Nagaland goes to Manipur, whether a Naga tribal or any tribal, indigenous Naga tribal, if he enters into Manipur, now Manipur has also been given the ILP, Inner Line Permit policy since 2019. After a huge protest, they have also been offered by the government of India this ILP, Inner Line Permit. Now, if anyone from Nagaland, a tribal Naga indigenous from Nagaland enters into Manipur, they will be required ILP. So the point I want to raise here is, I strongly feel that anyone from Nagaland who enters into Manipur should be exempt, should be waived. The ILP should be waived from anyone who enters into Manipur state. Last time there were students' unions leaders who went to Manipur and they were required of the ILP, and that's not fair. So I would say did for that is not the point that I want to make. Did for that is not going to benefit everyone. But I strongly feel that the Nagaland state government should appeal the Manipur government not to impose the requirement for ILP, at least for the indigenous people of Nagaland, whenever they enter into Manipur state. Because anyone coming from Manipur and entering into Nagaland, they are also not required to. Nagaland state exempts them. Anyone from Manipur entering into Nagaland state exempts the ILP from, entering into Nagaland if anyone comes from Manipur. So I strongly feel that the Nagaland government should appeal or should request the government of Manipur to not impose the requirement for ILP on the citizens of Nagaland whenever they enter into the state of Manipur. For now, if you are from Nagaland and if you enter Manipur, you will be asked by the police at the Mao Gate checkpost to produce your ILP, Inner Line Permit, and that's quite inconvenient. So in that way, people from between Manipur state and Nagaland state, as people from Manipur can enter Nagaland freely without ILP, so as should the people from Nagaland be able to enter into Manipur state freely without ILP, so that in that way there can be mutual understanding. In that way, it doesn't create any inconveniences for people from these two states. And I think one of the reasons why the state government is always hesitant and reluctant to fully implement ILP is because it requires budget. It has financial implications. And ILP is a good thing, but it needs to have a budget from the state government, right? ILP cannot be just a policy. Because Dimapur has a very porous border where you don't know who has entered and who has not entered. Now, Dimapur does not have a border, does not have a border wall, does not have a border fencing. So anyone from Assam, anyone coming from Assam, coming from Bihar, coming from Rajasthan can come and enter into Dimapur, into Nagaland state, without necessarily taking the main road or the highway or the train station. Anyone can enter into Nagaland state, and because there is no border, there's no structured border. I mean, Nagaland has no way, no chance of identifying these people. But except for people who come, who fly from New Delhi or who fly from Guwahati and entering the Nagaland through the airport and through the train station or through the bus route that the national highway into Nagaland. Only these 3 routes can be checked. Other than that, the border is so wide open. Anyone who wants to enter can enter freely still, and if there's no proper checking, they will not be detected in any way. Because nobody can just go around and asking, where is your ILP card? Please produce it. We want to see. Nobody has authority to except for the police. But the police human resource, the police resource or police human capital is too less for now. That they don't have the capacity and they don't have the power to the human resources to be able to conduct ILP checking every now and then. So before Dimapur came within the fold of ILP, it was easier to check ILP defaulters as they crossed, because they have to cross by any means, mostly the Kohima Road via Batkai Christian College. So they have to go through only one way most of the time, through highway. And there's no airport in Kohima, so it's easy. It was easier those days. Now Dimapur has a wide open border. It's going to be very, very challenging. So the state, it needs to keep a reasonable amount of budget every year for the implementation of ILP. And I think that's what the Naga Students Federation and Dimapur Naga Students Union have been, pressing the government of Nagaland to implement ILP very, very seriously. Without doing that, and without having any budget, without assigning any dedicated officers to check ILP, to implement ILP, honestly speaking, it's not going to be possible. On paper, it has been implemented in Dimapur, New Land, and Chumukidima. In reality, it's not going to happen. That's just my personal analysis of how ILP is going to be. And like I said, the non-Indigenous people from Dimapur, with their respective cutoff dates, if they can prove with certificates or with any sort of documents that they have settled in Nagaland before 1979, they will be given the PRC, and with that PRC, they can become a permanent resident of Nagaland. Also, they will have the property ownership. They will have the property ownership rights, and they will have the voting rights as well. So this is the update so far, and I appreciate the fact that you all tune in, and this is a very important issue. I think we need to keep discussing on this issue. So before I end this live talk, I would just look into some of your comments and see if I can answer some of your questions, or I can just react to some of the questions and comments that you have written. Why my comment is being deleted? No comments are deleted. We don't get time for that. Please do a deep political, social, historical research in reservation issue in Nagaland. That's we will take up next. Reservation issue in Nagaland. Can ILP be implemented? It can be implemented, but the effectiveness of the implementation is not guaranteed. That's the point we are making tonight. Why are non-locals getting triggered by the implementation of ILP? What about the ones who are born here? It doesn't matter whether you are born here or you're not born here. The cutoff date is 1979, November 21. If you came to Nagaland after that, as a non-Indigenous persons, as a non-tribal, other than someone from Manipur or other than someone from Mizoram or Arunachal, then you will always need to produce, you will always need to obtain ILP. It doesn't matter whether you're born here or not born here. If you came to Nagaland after 1979, you will always need to produce ILP. It's only for those people who came to Nagaland before 1979, November 21, they will be not required to produce the ILP. So they're exempted from the requirement of ILP. That's the point I want to make. All right, so Enzantang Baton. ILP should be imposed strictly because we cannot enter Manipur and Arunachal without ILP. Therefore, Nagaland should also impose strictly and check every corner. That's a tit for tat action. So that depends on, that's the call of the Nagaland state government, whether Nagaland state would like to take that call or not. That's their decision. That will be the decision of the cabinet and the state government. But I think in the long run, I would rather look at the other way. Let me frame it this way. Since, like I said, Manipur state government requires any citizens from Nagaland to enter into state of Manipur, they require Nagaland citizen has to produce ILP that's required by the state government of Manipur. In fact, if you do a deed for that, then Nagaland state will also need to ask the citizens of Manipur to enter into Nagaland to produce the ILP. I think, but that will create lots of inconveniences because, you know why? Because the reason is this. Nagaland is the highway, is the main highway for the people of Manipur, the trucks and the vehicles and all sorts of land road. Nagaland, everyone who comes from Manipur who goes to Assam, other than flight, other than air, they need to cross Nagaland. So producing ILP every now and then will be such a hassle for the people of Manipur. So in other words, I would rather suggest that the government of Nagaland request and appeals the state of Manipur government, the state of Manipur, to exempt the people of Nagaland to the requirement for ILP when they enter into the state of Manipur, so that both give some sort of a relaxation from both sides, reciprocally. Otherwise, if you start requiring ILP from Manipur side and from Nagaland side equally and from Arunachal side, then it can create a lot of inconveniences and havoc for people who regularly travel between these two states, right? Because it's a neighboring states, so requiring ILP will create a lot of conveniences, practically speaking, and that's to speak about this realistically. So I think the best way would be, let the state of Nagaland request the Manipur government to exempt the people of Nagaland from the requirement of ILP when they enter into the state of Manipur, and it's done. Like it's going to be very, very easy and very convenient for both citizens from both the states. Otherwise, when you start a policy of did for that, then it's going to create a lot of conveniences because it's a lifeline for the people of Manipur in a way. Hakuna Matata. All right, so non-locals can own land in Nagaland if they were settled here before 19. Exactly. So that's not necessarily, not that they can, buy a new land this time but whichever land was purchased before Dimapur area was converted into a tribal belt, in 1979. Like I said, Visual Angami, when he was the chief minister, Dimapur region was declared as a tribal belt only in 1979. So whoever has purchased land in Dimapur before that, definitely they cannot be chased out, right? Because the law came late and they came first. I mean, I would consider that. Ro Odi, what about the talk with both the students' body? I think that it's going on. Let's see what happens. And Zantham Badun, Manipur and Nagaland should be exempt from ILP for traveling. Exactly, that's the point. So whether it's people from Manipur or whether it's people from Nagaland, they should not require ILP from each, from both sides. If you start doing that, then it creates a lot of inconveniences because these two states are neighboring states and they need to travel between two states every now and then. That's the whole argument. KM Calorie. When Nagaland acquired statehood, Dimapur, being part of Assam, was legally and constitutionally excluded from the Naga Hills and the From 6th schedule. Maybe the reason for not implementation. Exactly, that's the whole point. Dimapur was not part of a Naga Hill. It was not a tribal area. So whoever has purchased land and whoever had settled in Dimapur, they were all exempted. They are all now exempted from this ILP requirement and they can still own property there. So that's the whole conversation. That's the whole point. And if any one of you is wondering why the non-locals were allowed to buy land in Dimapur in Nagaland, because they probably had purchased the land before 1979. Now they cannot be just snatched away, right? But after converting Dimapur region into a tribal belt by Visual Angami as the chief minister those days in 1979, I don't think any outsiders, the non-locals, can buy land in Dimapur either anymore. That's my analysis. That's my take. So Matthew Reynoil, Nagaland would be better joining Union of Burma. So when their kids go to the capital to study, they will marry Northeastern region. Okay, anyway. Bolman Jatri, how about Nepali? Do they need ILP? Definitely. I mean, Nepalese will definitely need ILP. Daily update. Nepalese also needing. Nepalese also need ILP for sure. But what about Nepali? Yeah, they do need ILP if they came only after 1979. Matthew Renault, are there any books from Fizo? I noticed he has no dairy published. That's another topic. All right. Natal Chimbop, should ILP be implemented on Nagas from different other states? No, so far there is no requirement for Nagas from, whether it's Naga from Arunachal or whether it's from Nagas from Assam or whether it's Nagas from Manipur or whether it's Nagas from Myanmar. There's no requirement for any Nagas entering into the state of Nagaland to produce the ILP. So let's make no mistake. Let's be very clear about this. But yes, anytime, any day, the government of Nagaland can come up with a policy for anyone, whether a Naga or non-Naga, a tribal or non-tribal, anyone who is coming in, entering the state of Nagaland, anytime may be required ILP, anytime in the future. That can happen as well, but that solely depends on the decision and policy of the government of Nagaland, right? So let's keep it that way for now. So my mom is Ayin Labongan. So my mom is from the Owl tribe and my dad belongs to Nepali, so I need ILP. That's a little complicated. Maybe let's see what the government has, what kind of policy the government has in place for such case. Yes, but technically, that's a very complicated question. I think the government needs to, dwell into that a little deeper and make policy for that as well. But I think ILP is not so serious for anyone who is connected to being a Naga for now. That's my understanding. So definitely you may not be required ILP. Animal lover. What about Nepalis from Sengrijan village under Chumbukedima? It doesn't matter whether Nepali or non-Nepali, anyone who is settled in Nagaland after 1979 will need to produce an ILP, right? And don't take ILP as a restriction to stay for you to stay in Nagaland. ILP is just a document to produce. It's as good as producing the PRC permanent residence certificate. So if you need to produce ILP, just go and get your ILP and just produce it. And I don't think the government of Nagaland will require you to, or will charge you so much to produce ILP, right? So anyone who stays in Nagaland after 1979 will need to produce ILP. As simple as that. Alright, so daily update. Sikkim is part of Northeast. Nepali from Sikkim should be exempted from ILP, as in the case of indigenous people. I think that should be the call to be taken by the government of Nagaland. Nilopo Chishi, I understand ILP is needed to avoid infiltration, but do you think it also affects the growth of a state economically and development? That's another issue no one wants to talk about, right? It can definitely affect, but you have to choose. You have to choose between these two. Whether you want your state to become like a Tripura state where it's economically very vibrant, but as a tribal, you become a minority. And the outsiders, the non-locals will start controlling the market, your economy, and your day-to-day activities. May not be politically, but economically, if they overpopulate in a state like Nagaland, a small state, then definitely there is a chance of Nagaland state turning into a state like Tripura, which will be very good for economy in a way that development in economy, the business will be very vibrant, but it can dominate the small tribal population, and that can endanger the indigenous community in many ways. So you have to choose one, whether you want a development or vibrant businesses like welcoming everyone from outside, or you want to protect your indigenous tribal group, which is very sacred, and which has a strong connection with the land and strong connection with their culture and social and customary practices. That's a choice that we all have to think about. What about the Kachari people? Kachari people is one of the recognized tribes in Nagaland. Matthew Renault, how do natives buy land? My ex-girlfriend was, anyway. And Jantham Badon, as of now, the problem is illegal immigrants, non-local people coming to Nagaland without proper documents. Hopefully the government can check properly and not just on paper. So many people are of the view and opinion that the Indian citizens who come from Bihar, Indian citizens who come from Rajasthan and any part of the country enter into Nagaland state, they are not the biggest, they are not a big headache for now. But I think what most of the people in Nagaland are concerned about are the people who come as an illegal immigrants from Bangladesh and who have no document, who have nothing to produce. So I think that can be a bigger threat as well. So that people need to just discuss, and there needs to have a public discourse on this. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining in this analysis for and discussion on the ILP that is now implemented all over the state of Nagaland, in the whole state of Nagaland. What is required now is just effective implementation, because ILP can be on paper beautifully, beautifully it can be on paper, but unless it is effectively implemented, nothing is going to work. One reason, because Dimapur has a very, very wide open border. The border is so porous. Anyone who can just walk into Dimapur from all corners of Dimapur, who is going to check? No one can possibly check. Humanly impossible for as of now to check anyone entering the Dimapur district. So the government needs to put their heads down together and see how to effectively implement ILP in Dimapur. As long as it is implemented effectively in Dimapur, the whole Nagaland state is, let's say 80% is taken care of, because anyone who enters into Nagaland as a non-indigenous people enter into Nagaland state, mostly at least I'm sure 80% from Dimapur district. So as long as Dimapur is taken care of, the ILP in almost all over Nagaland is taken care of. So for today, this will be the end of it. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I think we will discuss a lot of issues in the days to come. Next topic, we'll discuss about the reservation policy for a backward quota for the eastern tribes, and for the Lungleng and for the Jagsang tribe. I think we need to have a conversation on this as well. So please join us again when we have a conversation on this. And for tonight, we'll just end it here. And good night to you all, and I'll see you all again. Thank you so much.